Hello, teachers, and welcome to your online virtual professional development model of how you're going to create energy and matter models with your students around the book A Log's Life.
During your modeling of our ecosystem energy web, you'll be using the energy tracking lens. This is a tool that your 5th grade students will be familiar with as they used it extensively during their grade 4 energy unit.
In the previous lesson, you will use a Log's Life book as a read aloud to explore the organisms and the non-living things, aka matter, throughout the life of an oak tree in the forest. You will use this information to create a class list or chart of those living things, the organisms, and the different matter within the story.
Start this energy model sequence by having students stand in a circle. Tell the students that you're going to be following the energy tracking lens in creating your energy model. What's the energy story? Where does the energy come from, and where does the energy go? To track the energy flow, the first thing we need to do is identify the components of the system. Have students refer to their notes about what some of the components of the system were in the log's life. Components include the producers, the consumers, and of course the natural elements such as sunlight, water, and air.
As students identify different components or organisms of the system, hand out the necklaces that represent these organisms until all of the components of the model have been handed out. Don't forget to include the sun. You may also include air and water if they're shared, but know that air and water will not be a part of the energy model as the students develop it.
On the back of each card is some information from the story The Log's Life to help guide students' thinking during this model.
After components of the system have been handed out, return to the question, what's the energy story? Where does the energy come from, and where does the energy go? Students need to recognize that the sun is the source of almost all of the energy that is used on Earth.
Go ahead.
Okay, students, let's show where the flow of energy goes from the sun within our ecosystem. Who can share with me where does this energy flow to? It would actually flow to things like producers or plants.
Because this model is being used to represent what was read during the book A Log's Life, there's actually only one producer in the set of components you receive in your kit.
To show the sun's flow of energy, extend the yarn from the sun card to the card that says living plants, trees, branches, and acorns, which is represented from the Log's Life story.
During the passing of each string in the energy web model, you'll want to track the energy flow using the energy tracking lens. That will include describing the forms of energy that's being passed, energy transfer and transformations, and what component or organism is gaining the energy.
Now we're going to demonstrate a teacher-student interaction during this ecosystem model. All right, students, where does the energy come from?
Where does the energy come from?
Well, students, if you can't remember using evidence from the Log's Life book, you can always refer to the back of your card. On the back of the card will give you the information that you need if students are having a little bit difficulty remembering.
Miss P, The living plant gets its energy from the sun.
Oh, well, if it gets its energy from the sun, how does that energy flow from the sun to you?
I remember in our book that it talked about the sun's light shining on the plant and the plant collecting the sun's light for its energy.
I see. Don't forget that we're using the energy tracking lands to form our questions. The next question would be, how does that energy transform or change?
Ooh. Well, I know that trees grow, so it's making new leaves, making new bark, and making new acorns, and getting bigger. I think we learned about the trees making sugars, which are their food. Classmates, maybe you can help me out?
All right, students, now we have to think. Where does the energy go next? This would be the point where students who are within the model can either check the back of their cards or raise their hands and participate on an organism that might use the living plants for their energy. Then you would follow the energy tracking lens again, asking those same questions. How does the energy flow, and how does the energy transform and change?
Remember that you always want to talk about the energy story, starting with where does the energy come from and where does it go. So the next component in the system is going to repeat that it gets its energy from the living plants. But different components or creatures in the ecosystem are going to get that energy in different ways. The squirrel might be eating the acorns, while the porcupine might be eating...
The bark.
Cut.
Follow the energy paths until you have run out of string. And then ask your students, can we keep going? Why or why not? The answer is yes, we can keep going. Energy still flows and still moves, but the limits of our model is that we ran out of string. Make sure to have this discussion with your kids before moving on to your next day's model.